Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks, and a very happy birthday to one of our moderators, Tesla Ranger. Happy birthday to you there, dude. Welcome to the channel, RPG with DBJ. Today is World Building Wednesday. Thank you for being here. For those who do not know, this channel is broadcast live on 3 platforms: Twitch, YouTube, and our own Discord server. At least the audio's punched out there. If you join there, slide down to the boiler room. That's where all the cool kids hang out, sharing cake as we speak. But the other thing that you may not know is that this is a long form podcast, and we take a subject, talk about it all week long, Monday through Friday. The unfortunate passing of the actor Chadwick Boseman, who played most recently 4 times in the cinematic universe, and of course in his own movie Black Panther, plays the character Black Panther from the fictional nation of Wakanda. And so I thought I would dedicate a week to this. And you guys out there, thank you very much for helping me and helping us celebrate the life, the legacy, and just having a whole lot of fun while we do it. Let's have some smiles on our face while we celebrate the passing of this gentleman. Now, I understand there are plenty of people out there who feel that some of the talk that we are having, not necessarily here talk about tabletop RPGs, but in general might be disrespectful. But I just want to say, just in my opinion, that that the reason why so many people are upset is not just because of this individual. Like, this individual isn't any more important, but art in general hits us, or should hit us, in an emotional way. And great art draws out of us an emotional response, for good or bad. It's neither of those. It's just that when something is intrinsic in us, that we have an emotional response to the art, then we tend to have that same or similar emotional response to the loss of the artist, as if we're not going to get more from this individual or institution or what have you. And so I felt like, just because, well, sorry, but I'm the benevolent dictator here. I get to decide what we do. So I thought on this World Building Wednesday that we would take the core essential values of this fictional location in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Marvel Comics themselves, Wakanda, and build our own. So thank you very much for allowing me to to ramble on about that. So anyway, guys, the fictional nation of Wakanda, as you know, is the most technologically advanced nation on Earth, and it has in the both comics and cinematic universe, has some surprisingly powerful and hidden abilities that most people were just scratching their head, like, what, they can do that too? There's always something new. And in the Black Panther comic books, mind you, there's never really been a singular long-running Black Panther comic books. It's always had its ups and downs, its spikes and dips. And each time, in each iteration of Black Panther coming out, the costume has had minor to major changes, technological improvements. And during all of this, there is this backdrop of cultural significance. Wakanda is the only African nation to have never had any outside influences of colonization. It also is a country that literally is domed over. And so outside, like, the information about this country, the only information that leaves about the nature of Wakanda and their lifestyle is only any information that they allow to leave. So at one point, I still have the series where the United States, and of course they had parodies of the current politicians that were in power at that time. They were all in a room talking about the fact that well, we've got to send our spies into Wakanda. And somebody in the background is raising their hand, like, well, why? And they're like, because we don't know anything about them. And we suspect that they're more than just this third world country. And as portrayed in the movie, people from the outside world think of them as a very minor sheep herders. They are benign, but relatively extremely minor players on the global landscape. They're sheep herders. They're mountain folk, and non-violent, but nothing important. They don't have any resources, which brings us to Wakanda. Um, One of the thing that created this entire legacy was a an act of God, a roll of the dice, and that is much like that happens on any planetary building. When planets are formed, just like the Earth was impacted by an asteroid, and this asteroid happened to have an alloy on it known as vibranium that allowed them to progress technologically so much faster. It was a valuable resource, and it was a parallel, a stand-in for the resources of Africa in modern day. Most of which, thank you there, Tesla. Yeah, thought you were celebrating. Sorry, it's all right. Much of which I joke. I'm going to let you guys let in on a joke in a minute, but um, the blood diamonds, uranium, even oil, and now with cell phones needing to have rare elements involved in them, a lot of these minerals, mineral rights, and heck, even just wood and foods and harvest things have been taken from Africa in real life, but were never really able to be exploited by the people that live there. And so Wakanda was a reflection of that. That, oh, not only do they have one of the most valuable element in the universe, really, according to people that live on Earth, but they also have complete control over it, and it's modified their entire life. Yeah. Oh yeah, Jarl DM says brings to mind elven sanctuaries hidden in the woods. Yeah, Tesla kind of beat you to it. Tesla Ranger put it into the Discord, the hidden elf village TV tropes. Yes, if you go to tvtropes.org, yeah, the hidden elf village trope as used in pop culture. This is a small, secluded world populated by a tribe or group who comes to the it's gonna pop off of me. Comes to the pragmatic decision that what goes on outside their borders no longer is or has ever been their problem, and that was the motivating problem with the modern day political aspect of Wakanda. Right, that was their big old argument. Like the outside world doesn't matter, and the inside it's only us, and here's a big middle finger to everybody that lives outside. If they had any influence of what a middle finger was at that time, parallel development, I'll say. But anyway, your all DM says, yeah, it brings to mind elven sanctuaries hidden in the woods. You can't find them, and they spend time making sure they don't look special or interesting to the outside world. And you find this with, like, I don't know, the jungle cities hidden way in the Arctic regions or something, right? Or hollow worlds are an example of that. Cameron says when being unassuming becomes suspicious, you have stepped into fiction land or Cold War America. And like your LDM says, yeah, any era in America. It's the preemptive striking, because what you don't know, you fear, and when people think you fear, you get angry, and so it just builds upon that. So yeah, we need to send spies. Why? Because we don't know them. Oh, and to make matters even worse, in the modern context within Marvel Comics, Wakanda has no treaties with any country outside of themselves. No trade agreements. They're not allies with anyone else. They don't. Now, mind you, as a person, as was written in the comic book, a person raised their hand and was like, yeah, but they also have never made war against anyone else ever. They've never filed, been to the global, they've never joined the UN. They've never raised their hand and said we need to file some kind of like articles against other countries. They've never made embargoes against anyone, and they are literally neutrality to its fictionalized extreme, more so than the classic neutral countries. They even were like, we're not just neutral, we just don't want to be involved with anybody else. And yeah, starting a war, right? Like your DM says, finally I've discovered the secret paths into Discanda. Yep. Yeah, no treaties is one of the hardest things to buy in our modern, massively interconnected and interdependent world. Yeah, and of course, in in real life, you, it is the exact equivalent of the new person walking into the prison yard when they're arrested. Right? They're arrested, sentenced. They went from jail. They get sentenced. They go to prison. They walk inside, and they got to go through the crucible of being the newbie. And when they walk into that yard, and everyone's looking at them, it's like, yeah, you got to pick a side because you're not going to survive without doing so. Being neutral is not an option, but in this case, it was. So, World Building Wednesday. What are we doing? Well, in this case, um, we are going to build ourselves, in our setting, a location somehow has an element, a resource that is unlike any other in this world. It could be a fount of magic. It could be a nation built over the body of a dead god. It could be um, a mineral like Dungeons and Dragons, where you have like mithril or adamantite or something. It could be this nation has access to some resource, untold, and unlimited, unlike any other place. Now, of course, there is a limit to the vibranium that they can mine. No one exactly knows how much of it. I mean, the vibranium mound in Wakanda is like the size of a mountain, and so if you scrape off a little bit at a time, sure, it could last quite a few 100,000 years, as long as it's not exploited. But that's what we should have. Uh, Cameron says, "Is Wakanda part of the UN, or was T'Challa's dad just speaking there?" No, he was just speaking there. Not according. Wakanda has never had relationships out into the outside world officially, but mind you, like your all DM said, it's pretty much impossible not to have some interconnectivity. So, um, T'Challa's dad, I can't remember his name. Wow. T'Chaka. There it is. T'Challa's dad was speaking be in as a nation's leader about other nations doing what they need to do to take care of their people. He was basically admonishing a lot of them and was like, well, this is why we don't have relationships with you guys, because you guys are always fighting and economic resources and medical care and security, and we're doing our best for our people. You need to do your best for your people so that when you improve, we'll connect with you. Now, he wasn't being very harsh with my how I'm saying it, but that's essentially what it was. So yeah, and it wasn't until the end of the movie that they not open their borders, but express exactly who they are. Now, Yarl DM says, "What's the setting where they build a city around the Trask? It's Salt and Wound, yep, or something. The Trask keeps regenerating, and they build a whole civilization around it. Yeah, it's called Salt and Wound, and I have it. I think I could. There's a possibility of calling it up or something, but yeah, there's Salt and Wound is the setting where in the past there was a big war with the Tarask. A bunch of nations came together, and mind you, this is built off the old Tarrasque, air quotes, old Tarrasque, where it was kaiju sized. And they threw down like 13 harpoons into its body to pin it down to the ground to keep it from regenerating and rising up. And the harpoons are like, um, there's enchantments on it, and then these 13 meridians, they're called, city elements, were developed around the Tarrasque. And there's a culture of like hacking the body up to keep it from regenerating. And then there are alchemists that make everything from like drugs to mutagenic effects. They hack off the bone, and they actually have warriors that are using the bone from the creature itself that can cut through its hardened hide. And then it just became it's a pretty nasty environment. For example, you can play a ghoul in this world because ghouls have flocked to the area. The blood has mutated the plants in the region. There's a druidic circle there. At once, there's both a druidic circle that is built around the Tarrasque, worshiping it and wants to release it into the wild because it's a natural creature, and they're basically butchering it and punishing it. There is a section of the city, the tail section. At one point in the past, the harpoon on the tail got loose, and the tail started like smashing down, and it destroyed that part of the city. And there's a whole like hierarchy to the like who's in charge, and people living by the brain, and then making deals to get some of the meat because people of course eat it. It's crazy. But yeah, oh yes. um Andrea says, Andrews Martin says, adamantite is mined from the fallen meteorites, is the same as vibranium. Yes, absolutely. In the Marvel comics, they make a distinction between like adamantium and vibranium, but whatever. It's no different than unobtainium, right? It's just a stupid name for something that is this valuable resource. And heck, you could even make a valuable resource that is like, it's the unnamed resource. Like, oh, what does it do? It does everything. Cameron says, I really like the dead god thing. They could mine the bones. Oh, hell yeah. Oh, hells yes. I'm with you there, Lloyd, man. Yeah, Jarl DM says, unobtainium really is the dumbest name I've ever heard. Avatar. Stop making fun of I was going to say Cameron Mitchell. James Cameron. Yeah, Cameron Mitchell is a chef who's very popular here in Central Ohio. Yeah, James Cameron. Yeah, dumb name. Oh my God. But it's like scientists naming a next door galaxy Snickers because ours is called the Milky Way, right? It's people could just be uh, trying to be ironic and silly to just make things stupid. Andrews Martin says, or maybe a spaceship fell. I thought about that. Spaceship fell. And that's where they get their technology, and maybe an advanced suit that chooses its wearer according to physical and psychological conditions. Wakanda forever to you there, Rickard. Yeah, thank you very much for popping on in. So we have to have a resource that is located in this nation. I'm torn between the dead god and the spaceship idea, so that we're not exactly doing the meteorite fell from the sky, and now we have the exact same, albeit weird name for this mineral or something. But I do like all those. You know what? Both could happen if they are ancient aliens, like something Egypt mythological, Egyptological um, symbolism kind of reminds me of something like that, right? Where the blending of Egyptian mythology, we can also imagine as being Egyptian styled technology as well. I don't know. I like it. Paintaminium. Yeah. Let's call it hard to finium because it's hard to find. Yeah, dig it up, because we've got to dig it up. So, oh man, Yarl Diem says, yeah, it could be a little of both. The spaceship crashed, and the being aboard is so um, psychically powerful. It's like a god, and it creates a symbiotic relationship with the chosen warrior or something. Oh yeah. Now remember, vibranium is also, while it's not sold on the street corners and whatnot, Orium because it's or. Thank you, there, some random person 412. You're not as random as you think you are, uh, unless you're the 412th clone punched out of the creche or something. But yeah, it could be that now vibranium has affected the landscape in the world, right? This culture where it's not being sold on the street corners, but even without the Black Panther, the other tribes that are in Wakanda are able to use it. So in this regard, there is some background capability that the rest of the society has, and there are these chosen individuals that rise above that have command over it or something like that. Ooh, Andrew says like a good Venom like god. Ooh, how do you know they're good? That would be awesome. Anyway, Rickard says so so more that the essence of the god lingers over the nation rather than something to harvest. Maybe now since we are world building by basically using like the core essential values of Wakanda, despite the fact that they have technologically advanced, they still hold tight to their um, they hold tight to their religion. They still believe in like the natural order of gods, right? They still believe in the Black Panther god, Bast, and these other uh, anthropomorphized animal-like beings, which for them are real. So they could have their own set of their own gods or godlike beings, or this starship that landed that has this like that's a very psychically powerful or something. Maybe they consider this being or beings like it to be their own gods even till now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like Rickard says, wait, godlike beings from outer space? Do you really want to go there? That way lies madness, like Cthulhu. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I hear you, random person like thingium because it's a thing, or pantherium because of the panther. But yeah, maybe something like that. Like it could be, or maybe the the this psychic creature brings something out of us as humanity. So diverging away from like panthers and gorillas or something. Maybe there's something inside of us, like we're able to harness our own desires and fears and dreams and things like that in our own subconscious, and then they become real. You know, uh, a little bit like giving the serum to Captain America makes a good man even gooder. Maybe it's something like that. An evil person becomes eviler. Um, Jarl DM says the ore could be like Valyrian steel, hard to forge, but if you can master it, the best metal in the world. Families pass down dig it upium weapons, shields, armor, etc. down the generations. I like that, where I like that idea that even if you could get to it, you still have to have the skills necessary. I'm The first thought that comes to mind is the passing down of the ability to forge real Japanese or Damascus steel, where there's nothing written down. Excuse me. And yes, we have technology to try to mimic the same effect, but there's nothing like doing it by hand. Like I remember watching a documentary. Mind you, I don't know very much about pure Japanese culture, but I remember watching a documentary, and there were individuals talking to. It was a rare opportunity to see these gentlemen, young men being taught how to forge swords by katanas, the Japanese steel, and the older gentlemen, when they were getting the metal, getting the heat, the forge to a particular temperature, the person said, well, how do you know how hot it needs to be? And the person teaching was like, because you just know, right? We don't use a thermometer. We just happen to know. It's when it gets to us, when it looks right, that's when we start, and it's sometimes much like an artist, a real artist, like a chef or someone that's into fashion or something. They don't measure a damn thing. They just go, you know what? This is about right. They don't even think about it. They go, what's a pinch? A pinch is this much. Boom, put it in there. Nope, needs one more, without even tasting it or whatever. They just eyeball it and stuff. And I think something like that could be possible. That even if you stole it, you're still like, how do we forge this stuff? So I like that. I like that a lot. I'll get back into the in the chat, yeah, as y'all DM says, Stargate SG-1 has the Egyptian gods as powerful ancient aliens. I like the blending of that, where it's like the Wakandan culture is a blend of like their old ancient ways that have never been influenced. Plus, they have layered over it this high technology. Like, for example, in the movie Black Panther, the hovercraft starship, which they never explain how it hovers, but of course it's high tech. Of course it's got reactionless drives. It was designed that if you looked at it from the top with the windows and such, it looked like one of a carved African mask. And I like the idea that these things are blended together. The Komoyo beads that they wear on their wrists that have like, oh, they just hold a bead up and it's got a three-dimensional image, and they hold another bead up and it's like nanotech that can help heal a wound, and they have another bead that, I don't know, is explosive or can be used as a drone or something. Like, I like the idea that there's, they didn't develop cell phones. They don't know what the cell phone is. They just, their old culture became technological for them. So I'm thinking in this nation that the old ways of like rangers, druids, barbarians is embraced in many ways, right? Um from the outside, we don't, the classic idea of a knight and a wizard, we wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But a wizard in their culture might have like tattoos or like painted things on their bodies, or a cloak that's like looks like it's made out of animal hide, but there's like these intrinsic things written, carved into bone or something like that. Like, from the outside, we think, oh, they're just these tribalist persons that haven't advanced. But when you get closer, you're like, no, they're pretty badass. We don't know it. Anyway, Deadman says the super serum used to create Captain America also created the Red Skull. Yeah, it enhanced their personalities, basically. Cameron says Asperium could be a metal that reacts with psychic abilities or even just thoughts in general. Ooh, going back to the venom like being or something. The sorry, it just brought to mind the Egyptian style of the headdress representing the different animals, but maybe the power. The only reason that it looks like that is to hold in this. I can't describe it any other way. The godlike goo only has a physical shape because of what it has poured itself into, so it could communicate with humanity, which might be pretty interesting in and of itself. Jarl DM says Japanese iron was not great, and so they had to develop this masterful swordcraft to make swords that didn't shatter or break. And from what I understand, I think katanas still shatter and break during the forging process, if I'm not mistaken, which is why they had to master it, because, yeah, it was very brittle and such. I think that if, from what I heard, they could even sharpen the edge of the blades with just rice paper. Um, it was that the edges of the swords were both that sharp and that brittle, much like today's facial razors. Those aluminum blades that people shave with are so sensitive that our own hair dulls the edge of those blades, despite those blades being razor sharp. So, yep. Um, Now Rickard says, kind of wanted to try and use the general idea of they have something special that makes them more advanced than the rest of the world, rather than outside tech arrived, so they used it to build more advanced tech. True, I hear you on that comment. I I guess they're just pulling on the fact that this Wakanda started because of this, asteroid hit the Earth, and then they started using it as a. But I get what you're saying, as opposed to an outside influence gave them something. They're actually harvesting something that's a natural part of their environment. So I see where you're going, which I agree with you on that one as well. Gelatinous deity. That's so silly, Cam. Ricker says, to quote a random internet writing, how much information was lost due to never having been written down? Because who would be stupid enough to not know that? Right? Yeah, exactly. Like, things gets pet. Why would we write it down? You just tell the next person. What's the point? Yep. Um, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because normally, like in our own culture, right? It's like, of course you would know that. But one of the problems with our us having information at our fingertips, we also feel like we don't need to research things even further to get information at our fingertips. Like, us old grognards remember things that new people today are like, I can't believe this thing is happening, and then we're just like, because we're not upset because it's already happened before, right? Yeah, it's just weird. Like, Ricker says, more take on the idea of Wakanda, but making something that has no traces of Wakanda without deviating from the core idea. So, okay, so we have. I'm sorry. Andrea says, "Ooh, Uptao, the god of dinosaurs and labyrinths." Hmm. Just remember, I just remember that in the Forgotten Realms, there was something similar to Wakanda. Mesro, a magically advanced city with defenders empowered by the god that once lived in it. Hmm. And it brings up Ubtao, the god of dinosaurs and labyrinths. Okay. Now, okay, so um, we have this rare source of power for, like, maybe something to create weapons, an armory, maybe something else that is allowed to harness some other abilities, like, for example, an ability to defend their nation, or heal, or advance their minds, or something like that. Now, Augustin Rodriguez says, written and oral traditions are different. Oral traditions are more hierarchical in general, since I've always mispronounced that word. Since the person who has the knowledge can choose to drip feed it. Yeah, that's having learned martial arts. Uh, there's more to that than a little bit, because a lot of instructors are like, I'm just going to drip feed this to you. This information to you until the student goes, aha, now I know what you're telling me. Yeah. Uteo, or Ubteo, was the patron deity of Chult. He was also known as the father of the dinosaurs, creator of Chult, founder of Mesro, and the deceiver. Okay, all right, okay, for Forgotten Realms. All right, not too bad. All right, so now, beyond this, we also have to. There's a bit of importance with Wakanda here in our setting, right? We also have to have this idea that these are people who normally are viewed, if not on the middle ground, the bottom rung of our society. If we want to go classic, we have to go goblinoid, like orcs or hobgoblins or something like that, where they are perceived not necessarily, or maybe let's go lizard folk, right? Where they're not necessarily perceived as a threat, but they are also not They are also not kobolds fit in that, yeah, where they're not a threat, but they're also not looked at as like um, we need to wipe them out. It's a yeah they exist, but and as long as we keep them at arm's length or we have no reason to entreat ourselves with them, then it's okay. Because that's the other part of Wakanda where because they've been hidden away from the outside world and they've specifically made sure to keep up the lie, which of course it's fictionalized, right? There's no way, no lie stays hidden beyond one individual, right? So otherwise, two or more people becomes a conspiracy that's end up getting revealed at one point or another, even upon someone's deathbed. So yeah, the lie has to continue, and they also have to be people that when they leave their realm, they're just like they are. I don't want to say insignificant, but no one gives them a second glance, and that's kind of strange. I'll get into your comment here in the Discord in a minute, Rickard, but um, yeah, and like your all DM says, written traditions were also um, hierarchical until pretty recently. Yeah, they were because remember, only certain people could read. Those individuals that were taught to read usually were taught to read by people who already had an agenda, whether it was political or religious or factional. Whether it was like not facts but factional, like a faction would tell people certain things. Yeah, I'm with you with the kobolds idea, maybe. Hey there, Steve Senior. Hairless Armin says, non-threatening to the established order. Yes, so we would have to pick. Now, mind you, we don't have to pick a Dungeons and Dragons race. We could also just make it would be strange but kind of cool to pick a collection of Dungeons and Dragons races that live there, but when they go out into the world, like it could be a mix of like gnomes and lizard folk and kobolds and what's something else like humans and elves and dwarves mixed together that happen to live there. That when they go into the outside world, they end up blending in with everyone else on the outside world, not understanding that when they come back home, they are literally different. I guess an equivalent would be like the Underdark, where there is an Underdark version of the surface version of those races. So the Surfnevlin are equivalent to gnomes, and like the deep gnome is different than a gnome. The drow is different than the high elf. Maybe it's something like that, where you have the people living in our fictionalized Wakanda-sized nation are they may not look very much different, or even if they look different, no one looks one way or the other, but they are different. Like, oh, on the outside they're lizard folk, but inside they're dragonborn, right? But from a visual standpoint, it's like, man, they look a little bit different, but it's not a big deal. Something like that. I could see something. Now, Rickard says, not fact checked, but an excellent example of who would not know this is as late as the 1850s, uh, Cruet stands for condiments. Oh, shoot. There we go. It moved a little bit. There we go. Cruet stands for condiments, came with a bottle each for oil and vinegar, a shaker for salt and pepper, and a third shaker for nobody knows what. Although it's far from ancient history, there isn't a shred of evidence to suggest what was commonly stored in the third container. It might have been powdered mustard. But the truth is, no one knows. And cruet stands, yeah, those common the common stands where you there's a little hook at the top, and you see this in restaurants everywhere today now with like hot sauces are put in there, or the condiment du jour that is used in the kind of food that is served in that restaurant. So, but yeah, you always see the where you have the handle and it's got a little platform and the little holders where you put like in the states here, right? We have like salt, pepper, ketchup, mustard. Maybe there's like depending on where you go, you might have like hot sauce. You may have they may have their own, like a barbecue type sauce, like their own handmade thing. But yeah, you're right. I I never knew that, but then when you think about it, you're like, wait a minute, that's right. Why wouldn't you know that? And everyone else is like, well, why don't you know that? Yeah. Rickard says, how about the Fremen? Didn't they also have a hidden part of Arrakis that was less of a wasteland? Ooh, that's a good example. Thank you. The Fremen from Dune that lived on Arrakis, the planet Dune that wandered out there in the wastelands that were thought of as like second class, third class citizens. Like who would live out there in the wasteland? But guess what? They're walking around with high tech suits that recycle their own moisture. You know, with the which I love the idea, even though it bothers me, with the tubes up the nose to get the moisture probably dripping down into the throat and things like that. Yeah, that is a great analogy. I love that because much like fictionalized Africa is this uncharted, you know, the idea of the dark reaches of the jungle, and there are these people that live out there. Why would they live out there? Well, they must be tribal, and you realize, like, nah, we're pretty badass. You just don't know it, right? Um, Augustin Rodriguez says, what I dislike about Wakanda is that vibranium is too all powerful. It even works against dark elves and other nominally invulnerable creatures. Limitations call for creativity. Yep. As Augustin Rodriguez points out, one of the writer Brandon Sanderson's rules is that the most interesting part of magic, because he's got these rules of magic, and magic is a stand-in for anything like technology or whatever, special abilities, superpowers, you know, erase word, put in whatever you want, whatever extraordinary capability. It's not the capability, it's the limitations imposed on it that's more interesting. And you are right. As a as an old grognard who has always loved the Black Panther character, back when Black Panther, this was before the real world like racial tension part of it was brought into Black Panther. Black Panther was an Afrofuturist character. He fought aliens and other technological creatures and powers and things like that. The vibranium really had just less than a handful of uses. Now it's like, oh, it's both energy and a mineral, and it has a cause the growth of the heart-shaped herb, and it does these things. I'm with you. I don't like an all-encompassing, it does everything, like an omni thing. I like the idea that it is a mineral, or it is something that draws out psychic potential, or you know, it has a specific reactionary thing to it. Like if it is heated, it does this. If it is frozen, it does something else. But within a limited number of circumstances, I'm a fan of that. So I'm with you there, AR. Cameron says lizard folk are awesome since they are generally portrayed as emotionless. I always saw one of them having emotions either got them banished or elevated in society by becoming a shaman. Okay, all right, I see that. They hell, you could have other humanoids that are not lizard folk who live in their community, and the rest of society looks down on them because they are regressing in their culture. Like, of course, those humans and halflings would go there dressed in their tribal manner and their lizard skins or something with those lizard folk. Huh, they're not important on our in the whole, you know, global uh you know, nations or something. Hairless RN says it actually added a minimal moisture to prevent the nasal passages from drying out. I did not know that. I did not know that. But it makes sense though. It does make sense because I've had dry nasal passages, and it's whew. Yep. Hairless RN says, yep, going native. Um, Cameron says Brandon Sanderson has a pretty cool YouTube channel. Oh, dude, I well, I can't watch it, but I listen to it all the time. I just found it because one of his writing advice videos showed up on my feed. He has a parrot. He sure does. And Brandon Sanderson also teaches science fiction and fantasy writing at a college, and he wanted to give back because an instructor instructed him. So his classes are recorded, and he puts them up on his YouTube channel. So that's why I said it, because I stole it, because I watched it, because that's what he said when he said it. Anyway, so we have now, mind you, pinning down exactly what this country has. We could go on for 3 weeks trying to hash that out with all of us. But just be aware that if you want to do a Wakanda sized nation, that they have an element, something that the outside world doesn't have, and they don't exactly have access to, and that gives them great potential. And the outside world looks at them through the lies and deceit that they are, that they're not very important. I will say, yeah, like Rickard says, while we're on the topic, writingexcuses.com. And Brandon has a few other podcasts. Oh yeah. He's actually quite prolific, both in writing and in, I'll say, the educational format. Yeah. Jarl DM says the Spice Melange is pretty great as a resource. It does a few specific things, but the most important is that it's the only way to allow faster than light travel. I like the fact that the Spice Melange, as an example, like, it has other uses, but the requirement of its other uses requires such a deep, like a sacrifice of self and of time, that it's not available to everyone. So if for you guys that don't know, the Spice Melange in Dune allows faster than light travel. And one of the reasons is because the guild navigators have the, I'll call it psychic ability to navigate into a fourth, fifth, sixth dimensional space, wormholing or whatever you want to describe it, to travel, to fold space, to go from one place to another. So only the guild navigators are able to navigate time and space to go from one place to another, because their minds are able to handle it. Unfortunately, those guild navigators, which used to be human, do not look human at all. They're kind of Cthulhuid-ish. They're kind of Lovecraftian in many ways, by their bodies being mutated by so much Spice Melange. Now, on a limited level, the people who live out in Arrakis, their eyes glowing blue, has always been described that way, that use little pinches of Spice Melange. Yeah, they end up getting like these limited psychic potentials, the ability to do a lot of mind over matter effects, ignoring pain, and having extraordinary endurance and excessive speed, and reading minds, and being very empathic and things like that, upwards into like mind control and whatnot. So I like the idea that, oh, well, if you have this much of this this thingium, this hard to getium, if you have this much, you have this capability. But if you go a step higher, you're that much more divorced from normal society, but you also have greater potential. I.e., you're an NPC. How about we put it on that level, right? Yep, Hairless RM says, "Oh, but the cost." Oh, all right, you got to say it. You got to say it with like some music in the background, or maybe a bolt of lightning or something. Oh, but the cost. It will cost you your life and your soul. You got to have someone do that, right? Cameron says this city could be on a ley line node, which could increase people's magical potential, or hell yeah, like maybe people who normally are untrained, like maybe it's very easy, or it's a very common thing, like when I say common, like 1 out of 1,000 or 1 out of 100 are sorcerers, completely untrained, but they have this great potential on this ley line that others don't. Augustus says a small hit of hard to get him. Hard to get him. Oh man. Okay, so um, let's talk about the internal politics, all right? Because we could talk about all the crazy stuff for a long time, but one of the important things about the internal politics is this tenuous relationship between the different tribes in Wakanda. Now, mind you, you don't have to call them tribes. You can use whatever nomenclature you want in your world, but like in Wakanda, we have like the River Tribe. They were known as they had the greenish or aquamarine colors. Their tribe were the spies that were sent out, the war dogs. They were sent out around the world to be spies to report back to Wakanda, to make sure that any information that got out or vibranium that got out would be brought back. That kind of thing. Keeping watch on your enemies or potential enemies. The border tribe were the ones that wore the blue the blankets, the tarps around their bodies that had like runes and such written on them that allowed them to make the force fields. And they rode on the armored rhinos, which is like putting a bulletproof vest on Superman, I think. Anyway, they had the armored rhinos and they protected the borders. You have the mining tribe. They were the ones that had the reddish hue to their skin and their clothing, and pulled from real life world, the Bantu tribe, where they use like clay and such on their skin and in their hair. And then there's the merchant tribe, which I don't remember. I don't remember if they were placed in the movie, but I think they were. They just never had any speaking parts. Although I suppose the merchant tribe, as in the movie, was purple with a Zori that took care of the heart-shaped herb. So I suppose you could have the tribe of hidden lore, I suppose. And then there's the Jabari tribe, which was or the outsiders. Now, in our case, yeah. Oh yeah. Oh hell's yes, dead man. Oh yes. The 2020 Dune movie. I can't wait. It's going to be a financial. I hate to say this. Most likely, it'll be a financial flop and be one of the most excellent, brilliant movies ever made. I say that because of the director, Denis Villeneuve, Rebecca Ferguson, Zendaya, Jason Momoa, um, Timothy Chalamet. Feature adaptation of Frank Herbert's science fiction novel about the son of a noble entrusted with the protection of the most valuable asset and most vital element in the galaxy, spice melange. Spice melange. Like Rickard says, hate to say it, but you're probably right. Now, mind you, I'm being really sarcastic with that, but yeah, this is going to be one of the it's it feels like it is already predicted to be a cult classic. Right? We're going to see things we've never seen before. We're going to have plenty of time to sit with the characters. We're going to have a great story, and the general public's going to be like, boring. And the rest, and those of us that are into it are going to be like, this is sweet. What do you mean we're not going to get a part two? Fuck. Um, Yar DM says Oscar Isaac is great in almost everything he's in. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, unless a director holds him back, he's excellent. Cameron says the expensive as all helium could be magic itself. Expensive as all helium. I like that. Granting various powers when exposed to elements and when certain forging practices are used. I'm loving it. I'm loving it a lot. And the different, for me, I think the different factions, while on the surface they're like, oh well, we're the mining tribe, or the we are the forge the expensive as all helium tribe, and then maybe there's another faction that protects the nation, and there's like the Dora Milaje. We're the faction that protects the nobles and such. I think you could, on the outside, it seems like, oh, there's everyone's hunky dory, like everyone has their place and their place is where everyone should be, but there might be some uh, movement behind the scenes, because on one hand there is pride. This is, I think, where the player characters come in, right? where there is a pride coming from the faction or the village, the tribe that you come from, but there's also a jealousy that you don't have the social. You're not on higher up enough on the social ladder to have the power or the prestige of the other tribes, you know. And yeah, Josh Brolin is playing Gurney Halleck, Patrick Stewart's original role, and talk about limitations. Sorry, I know we're going into Dune here. The force fields in Dune, not quite portrayed in the movies, was an excuse to have hand to hand weapons because the force fields could stop the laser blasts, but if you use the blasters against the force fields, they would create like these thermonuclear reactions. So on one hand, you wanted to have lasers and on these blasters. On the other hand, you wanted to have, yep, laser guns make them all explode. Yep. So you as the enemy, I mean, the an army, of course you want laser blasters. You want lasers to shoot people. But on the other hand, you're like, wait a minute. While it might be fun to shoot maybe one person and have a thermonuclear blast, all that happens is it becomes these Pyrrhic victories. So what happens? The slower an action is, the easier it is to slide through the force fields. So you use these mono vibratory blades, these these mono vibe blades that a blade moves slow, goes through the force field, and then you can cut the other person up. Yep, your DM says such a brilliant way to explain why there's still close combat in a high tech setting, and that's why they noble families taught each other. They had warriors teach each other hand to hand combat, fencing, knife combat, that kind of stuff. Yep, I love it. I love it a lot, and maybe just maybe. No, that's going too far. Anyway, like Rickard says, squirreling a bit, but hot take: Brandon Sanderson's rules for magic rarely create magic; they create superpowers. Yeah, you're right. You're right. He calls it magic, but really they're superpowers. Let's not get it twisted. Most magic we kind of look at as superpowers anyway. We just like we describe it as magic, but they're just superpowers. we the classic slow magic, ritualized magic, isn't really a gamifiable thing. We want people to get it done right now, right? Like Tesla Rangers is like, are you saying superpowers aren't magic? They sure are. Cameron says we ran into force fields that blocked slow moving things, but not fast moving ones. It's different. Don't know if you can hear it. I believe it's downpouring outside, and I can hear it beating against the ceiling, against the rooftop. Anyway, we've come to the end. We didn't even talk about like enemies, adversaries. Shoot, I should have segued over into like role playing features. Like what kind of player characters would be involved in it? Would we have more like druids, rangers, barbarian, like naturalistic, or will we just be reskinning what we have? Like, for example, would we get rid of would this Wakanda-sized nation? Would we not have paladins, but would we instead have like oath takers? Would we not have clerics, but we would have shamans or oracles or witch doctors? I'm more of the fact of don't limit ourselves by words. Rose by any other name is still a rose kind of thing, where I think sometimes we as role players, we get caught up in the naming of things rather than the essence of what the thing is. So yeah, I could see us having most, if not all, of the role playing features, but I think sometimes the words get caught up. I'm looking at you, Monk, as a problematic named feature, Rickard's like, I'm not calling X-Men for mages or Superman for that matter. No, but from the outside, that's what they would be called, though, right? I mean, how many how many role players have basically made Superman out of their characters, right? I've got a flight spell. I've got a Eldritch Blast. I've got my mage armor on. I've got a scrying ability. That's pretty much Superman, minus the kryptonite, unless the short rest is your whatever. I'm being stupid. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me. Tomorrow is Third Pillar Thursday. The third pillar of exploration, for those who do not know, with the first and second pillars corresponding to combat and social interactions. So third pillarisms are my thing. You guys know that already, but for those who don't know, we get to talk about exploration. Pretty easy to talk about this for tomorrow, right? Wakanda being this mountainous jungle area. Of course, maybe there's some exploration into where, Too Hard to Get Him is stored or whatever, and exploring that part of it. And the idea of maybe if Wakanda is the only place in this world that the PCs have to leave our Wakanda-sized nation to explore the outside world, which might be devastated or something if you want to go post-apocalyptic. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me. Everyone, have a great day. I will see thee later. Thank you very much for being here with me. Yep. Thanks for watching. Have a great one, guys. Bye.